So my oldest daughter, halfway through second grade, we were talking about school, and she said, I don't want to go to school. And I was like, what do you mean? You love school? And she looked at me and she goes, school is so boring.
Right.
And at that moment, I was like, okay, we got to do something different.
Yeah.
That's what kind of started me on like my education journey from there. I'm Mackenzie Price, and welcome to Future of Education. If you have listened to any of my Gifted Minds podcasts, you know I'm super into empowering our kids to unlock their potential. I believe that all kids are limitless in what they can do, but often are held back by constraints put on them by adults and the traditional education system. I believe education is ripe for a revolution, and I want to talk with people about what the future looks like. So, welcome to Future of Education. For our first episode, I want to share a conversation I got to have at an EdTech event with a guy I work with, Jamalgross. He went from coaching in the NBA to coaching students. We had a lot of fun talking about the education system and how we are taking advantage of AI technology to create self-driven students at Alpha, where school's done in a completely different way. You will learn a lot in this episode. So let's launch into Future of Education.
My name is Jamalgross. I am so excited to be here with Mackenzie Price, a leader, a changer of education. She has a podcast, Future of Education podcast, YouTube channel. But beyond all of that stuff, she's also a mom, right? And she can provide some unique insight to the traditional education system versus what we're experiencing in the future. So could you speak to a little bit about, one, what's been your experience dealing with education in America?
Well, thank you, Jamal, for talking to me. I love getting to sit down whenever we have a chance to talk and kind of talk all things education. Here's the thing. I was kind of one of those students that got I would say maybe a little bit lost in the traditional system when I was growing up. I was a kid who liked doing well in school, so I would get A's, but honestly, the information would kind of go in one ear and right out the other, just as long as I got the A and that's what it is. There was never really a connection for why am I in school? What am I interested in? What's the reason that I want to learn all these things? What do I want to go take this information and do later?
Right.
So even though I had a pretty successful journey, I went to Stanford and got a degree from there, but I walked out of college and it was okay, now what do I want to do? And so I would say the rest of my life is kind of unfolded on this journey of figuring out what that is.
Right.
But like you said, when I became a mom, that was when things kind of got real for me, from an education perspective.
Yeah.
And I had two little girls who were kind of like me. They were the kind of kids who wanted to do well in school. When they showed up in kindergarten, they were both bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and totally ready to go learn. But here's the thing, the traditional system, there's a reason it's traditional. It hasn't changed in over 100 years.
Right.
It hasn't changed since you were in school.
Right.
It hasn't changed since I was in school longer ago than that. And when my girls were going through and starting their kindergarten process, they're now 17 and 15 years old. It hadn't changed from that either. Right. So basically, teachers were just you know what? We need time to get to know this huge class, which, by the way, teachers are amazing. I can't imagine how they're surviving well in this environment, especially it's only gotten worse. But they'd be okay, we need time to kind of try to get to know everyone, and that takes a few months. Let's just kind of put the kids in the corner and have them do that. They've got a huge classroom of audience full. And I don't know if you've heard this, but they've measured student satisfaction throughout K through 12. Mm-hmm. The happiest day of a student's career is kindergarten. That's it. And then it goes
Downhill
until junior year, when they finally are I think I see a way out. I finally get out of this thing. And that's what I kind of found. So my oldest daughter, halfway through second grade, we were talking about school, and she said, I don't want to go to school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what do you mean? You love school? And she looked at me and she goes, school is so boring.
Right.
And at that moment, I was like, okay, we got to do something different.
Yeah.
That's what kind of started me on my education journey.
Yeah.
From there.
So what's so interesting about one of the points that you made is the word interests, right? Connecting a student's journey, their academic achievement, right, to their interests. It's learning science has been out for 50 years that proves that achievement flies through the roof, and there's a compounding effect with that. Like when you connect my love for Avengers to whatever I'm learning in reading, right? I'm going to want to read more. It's not a rocket science of a concept. I'm going to want to do more, right? And if I press to third grade with a certain level of excitement, that carries with me to fourth grade. That carries with me to fifth grade, and that sends me on a path of my whole academic journey being something that's that's special, right? Even if you remove the interest, because that's life. At some point, you got to do something that you don't want to do. But even when we remove the interest being connected to the student, the studies will show the student will still perform like at an elite level. So I am curious. You made the comment about teachers, right? And typically like the model of the classroom being the same. Can you speak to a little bit about some of the things that you've seen, what you've done being a co-founder at Alpha that kind of changes that or flips that on its head?
Absolutely. So yeah, when I got frustrated with the traditional system, and it wasn't about my kid's school, it wasn't about the district, it was just about the model, right? The model of the system. And that's what made me say, okay, it's time to do something different. So I was in on kind of the ground floor of founding Alpha, which is, again, it's an alternative model. I don't think of it as like a private school. I think of it as an alternative type of model. And we did some pretty extreme things. We got rid of teachers. I mean, really did. We got rid of teachers. Now, we have something called guides. These kids aren't just totally, Lord of the Flies handling it themselves. What we did is we brought adults in who can connect with the kids and really help them understand their why, be motivational and, encouraging coaches, but they're not teachers. And, there's a little bit of a difference around how these kids are learning, which is what is truly revolutionary about Alpha.
Right.
So instead of having this traditional teacher lecturing to a classroom out of everyone using the same textbook because they're in the fourth grade and that's what you use, what we do at Alpha is we use AI. So we're using adaptive, personalized learning apps for the kids to learn. They're spending their mornings doing all of their Common Core subjects in apps, and that allows each kid to be learning at exactly their own pace, at their level, and we have it as this idea of a mastery-based concept. So ton of like learning science stuff I just threw out there, but that's in a nutshell what makes Alpha different is that we've got kids on a completely individualized, personalized learning path using artificial intelligence apps.
Right. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to see a kid go through that transition and kind of start to own some of their academic journey. You talked about your daughter earlier, there being a disconnect and a lack of interest and engagement. And naturally, when you make it specific to the individual, you unlock so many things, right? And with that model piece, you look at a phone 50 years ago, and it's this old clunky device where you have to turn the dial and it turns slow. Right?
You're too young to remember that, I bet. Aren't you?
Right, true. But if you look at a phone today, it's this sleek thing that can store more photos than grandma ever imagined, right? And it's got 15 bajillion cameras on it, right? You look at a plane 100 years ago, and the Wright brothers are barely getting off the ground. You look at a plane today, we can hover in midair, right? A classroom 100 years ago was a teacher, a textbook, and a group of students. You look at the same thing today in 2023, it's a teacher, a textbook, and a group of students. And to your point, that model, it's just expired. It's archaic. Like it's time to upgrade that to something that allows us to get specific to that individual. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think here's the thing. A lot of people will say, okay, I've heard about a lot more alternative schools popping up. There's a lot of schools coming around. And here's the difference. And what I think has been hard for those alternative schools to really get traction is they've said, okay, we want to think of the kid as an individual and we want to help them learn everything. But sometimes what gets lost in that is the focus on learning, right? We're having a hard enough time in the traditional model, especially the last 2 years with COVID and how things are going really poorly. We just had the nation's report card came out at the end of this school year in spring of 23. And, 13-year-old kids are doing worse than their parents in math. They're doing worse than their grandparents did in reading comprehension. So things are getting worse. And the issue is with a lot of these alternative schools, they don't necessarily put a focus on measuring learning. And here's the thing, you might say, and I think I'd say, hey, maybe we're going to graduate high school and we don't have to be like ready to go into medical school.
Right.
We don't have to do that. But I think everyone agrees that you should absolutely have Common Core basic K through 8 knowledge.
Right.
We should be awesome at that, right? Even K through 12, right? We should have that. And here's a stat that you've probably heard. Did you know that the average 12th grader graduates high school knowing as much math as the top third grader?
Right.
I mean, it's insane.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. The MAP test, so the test, just so we're all on the same page, the test that she's referring to, something called a MAP test, right? 10 million kids across America take it. And a graduating 12th grader in this country finishes with a 234. And so her being one of the great co-founders of Alpha, leadership staff, they went ahead and said, okay, 234. How can we ensure that all of our students are top half? And they said, who else on this grade, on this chart, gets a 234? You look down the list and you see that a 99 percentile third grader scores a 234. So in effect, we are walking kids across a stage, giving them a diploma with as much knowledge as an elite third grader. That's not good enough.
No,
right?
It's absolutely crazy. And then the other thing is, it's such a colossal waste of time for students. So that 50th percentile 12th grader,
right,
when they're a freshman in high school, they're at a 230 is their score. So they only go up 4 points in their maps over 4 years. And it's just a waste of time.
Right.
So the big thing with Alpha that we are doing differently is we have measurable results to make sure, hey, are these students really learning? Yes, they absolutely are. And our results are insane. We've got kids who are learning, 2 to 5 times faster than you do in a traditional school. And we can see those by measuring the results, which is a different model than so many of the alternative schools have done over the past 10 years.
Right.
They kind of are wanting to think about like the holistic child. And we're saying, yeah, the holistic child is really important. And so is crushing your grades and making sure that you walk out of 8th grade and high school knowing a lot, right?
Exactly.
Being in the 90th percentile or above, which is super important.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I've noticed specifically with what you all have built, what we've built at Alpha, is that formula of crushing our apps in the morning and then unlocking the rest of your data to pursue other things. Could you speak to, you used the word holistic before. There's an element of building life skills that is so necessary that doesn't get taught in schools.
Absolutely.
So please speak to that.
Yeah, so I mean, here's the thing. Parents send their kids to school to learn, but they send their kids to school to do a lot of other things. There's social dynamics that they want to learn. There's extracurricular activities. There's all kinds of other things that are going, but it's all built around this model where you send your kid to school for 6 hours a day and they sit in this classroom lecture thing. And here's what we found at Alpha. Our goal is not to graduate kids, in 8th grade, have them finish high school because they're learning twice as fast. What we want to do is totally open up their time so that they can go pursue things they love. So the way we do it, it's 2-hour learning. Basically, we get done in 2 hours what it takes the whole day for a traditional education system to do. So in the morning, kids are spending these solid 2 hours, with little breaks in between, doing their adaptive app work in math, science, reading and language, history, that information. And then what it does is allows them to go spend whatever they want to do in the afternoon. So that could be sports. It could be your performing arts. It could be that. At Alpha, we have a huge focus around just life skill development.
Right.
We want to make sure that kids are really going in and tapping into what unlocks their potential. And I'll tell you one thing, you can probably relate to this. I think there are a lot of kids, maybe they're like, I don't care about math. But when they're suddenly thinking about how they want to build a business and they realize like, oh, I actually have to calculate like, what's my cost of goods? How am I going to make a profit? Suddenly they see this like, oh, this is why I should know basic math is because I'm doing that. And that is when it's so fun to watch a kid who like has a light bulb moment where they're like, okay, yep, I want to go learn more. Or I'm going to go write, an email to someone I'm trying to get an internship with.
Right.
It means I should actually have like decent grammar. I should know how to do those things.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's a connection. The other thing I'll tell you, Jamal, is, every city has their great private school, right? There's that private school that's just known as the great private school. But here's the thing, those private schools, they really haven't changed in decades, right? Their results haven't really changed in decades. In some cases, they're getting worse, right? And they're getting off. And that's one of the big things that we've seen at Alpha is our results are phenomenal. And a lot of other schools, they can't compare and they don't want to compare.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing that we kind of touched on was that maximization term that we used earlier, or mastery, I should say. The question that I have for you, right? A big flaw that I see in the education system is that it's built off of time. When you're done with the third grade, you go to the fourth grade. Whether or not you're capable of doing fourth grade material is irrelevant. That question is beside the point. You're done with the third, you go to the fourth, right? Whereas at Alpha, we stress the importance of mastery. Can you talk about how that leads to a more confident student?
Absolutely. Well, so first of all, I mean, you think about these poor teachers who get a kid who's coming into, let's say, fourth grade, and they're behind. They don't maybe have good understanding of their second, third grade concepts, but that teacher's got 20 kids in the class. They got to go forward. And at the end of fourth grade in May, no matter what, those kids basically have to move on to fifth grade. So I really feel for them. And here's the thing is that when we look at schooling with a mastery approach, where kids really make sure that their foundational concepts are strong, it gives them so much more confidence. So, good example, it's really hard to do algebra if your multiplication tables are a little bit shaky. So if you miss some time in third grade working on multiplication, and pretty soon you're working on harder and harder concepts, and you're getting into your pre-algebra class in 7th or 8th grade, guess what? All of a sudden it's like, I don't understand this. And there's an interesting phenomenon that's part of learning science, which I love to kind of geek out on learning science stuff. But, basically by third grade, if a student is kind of a C student, that is their trajectory that they're going to be on. And I hear about this all the time with parents too. Parents will say, I love my child's great, but they're just an average student. They're kind of the average type of kid. And I think it's it's just such a bummer that so many people think kids are sort of this immobile, they're a
stuck.
50th percentile kid, and that's what they're going to be. And that's what the data shows, is that in third grade, a lot of those kids, if they're average at that point, they're going to stay average. And that is something that at Alpha, we are so against that.
Right.
We believe that any kid can change their trajectory with the right help and the right approach in terms of having this mastery-based learning. And, you can take away the learning science part of it, and you can just think psychologically. If you're not good at something and something's hard to do, you don't like doing it as much, and it's not great, right?
Yes.
If kids have mastery knowledge instead, and they go all of a sudden hey, I'm actually good at this. I understand this math concept. I know what I'm doing. This is fun. This gets more interesting. And that just kind of keeps snowballing into making it more and more exciting. So that's one of my favorite things about seeing kids at school, when they're just I can learn anything. I'm really good, and I can move at my own pace. And again, because it's all personalized and one-to-one interaction with regard to a kid working with their AI tools, if they don't understand something, they can spend more time on that concept. Or what's even more amazing with AI, the tool can be able to say this child is having an issue with
this specific
thing, and we're going to go back and fill that hole from first grade that they didn't get. And suddenly what that shows is kids just catapult in their learning, which is awesome to see. And that's what allows things to go better and better. So our results that we get, again, we're crazy data nerds at Alpha. We love to be able to measure, and our apps allow us to do that. And so you'll see kids get started in kindergarten, and they're just learning faster and faster. By the time our kids get into high school, we've got kids who are learning 5 to 10 times faster because they've figured out how to work in this self-driven system and go learn to learn. That's a big thing that we love to talk about as Alpha, is learn to learn.
Even you said even in their later years, but we have a kid in the first grade who's doing 5th grade math, Curzon. It's sitting down next to this guy, watching him do mathematical equations that would have stressed me out. And mind you, my academic journey, it was the right thing, right? I went to good schools. I had a good academic process, and the great private school in Baltimore, went on to college, get your master's degree. But you finish all that and you realize you don't know the first thing that there is to know about certain fundamental truths about life, right? You got the checkbox, but you didn't get that part of the education that is applicable to the next phase of your life. That it's so exciting. It is so exciting to hear the truth behind what learning science has not only showed recent, but for the past 40, 50 years. That Bloom's 2 Sigma came out in the 80s, which basically said, your point, any student in America is essentially capable of 1 Sigma better, 2 Sigma better, being a top 2.5 percentile student. But the only way to do that is to do exactly what you're talking about, mastery. Like,
one-on-one mastery learning is what does that.
Right.
And that doesn't work in a traditional school.
Right.
Like, it would be awesome if everyone could have an expert tutor who's great in every single subject, who's available all the time, and that just doesn't work. And with AI, that is now possible, where our students can get this tool. You know, another thing you brought up that I think is really important is that I think everybody has this belief around what schools should deliver. So for us, you know, we're very much in this 2-hour learning in the morning, and then in the afternoon, students around the country that go to alphas around the country will be able to focus on their life skill development. And for us, that's about entrepreneurship and public speaking and a lot of variety types of things that we want to really show these kids have life skills. But some people say, you know what, I want a school that in the afternoon kids can focus on performing arts, or I want them to focus on sports, or I want them to focus on religion is really important. And that's the thing that's so cool about what we've built at Alpha that's going to be so great, is that we can take this 2-hour learning product and we can put it into any school system and be able to say, okay, spend your morning working on Common Core via this system. You'll see the results, and then the afternoon kids can work.
That's powerful.
On whatever else.
That's powerful. So one of my last questions to you. So we said the 2-hour learning and then insert X. 2-hour learning, insert X. Can you speak a little bit more to in that secret sauce that is Alpha? There is the 2-hour learning. There's the guides. There are kind of parent involvement, the life skills. Can you speak a little bit more to the things that are unique to Alpha, so much so that you trusted your own child to that system?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that as we built this up, sometimes it felt uncomfortable because, again, you are putting your child in the position of becoming a self-driven learner, right? And here's the thing, in a traditional school, you take a kid who's totally uninterested in school, they sit in class, but they don't really participate, they don't want to do it. They're still listening to some degree. There's like something kind of falling into their ears a little bit, right? And doing that. Whereas at Alpha, kids have to take some sort of ownership and say, I am going to interact with the apps. I'm going to learn. And so one of the keys with Alpha is that we need to have the right motivational model that plugs into, again, that why. Why is this important? Because just sitting and working hard, which is what we want our students to do. We want them to work hard. We want them to have this productive struggle, which we can, again, see from the data that we are able to collect. You know, there's points when there's like an ideal zone where a kid is in the right level of material, where it's challenging them, but they're able to move forward. And we can measure that with their accuracy, with how much material they're moving through, you know, per minute or 15 minutes or whatever it is that we're looking at. And then there can be a point where, hey, this is too hard. Now, one of the things that's cool is these apps allow kids to go, okay, we got to step back because this struggle has gotten to be unproductive, right? And it's there. But these kids are going to take that time and they need to say, okay, I am in charge of my education. Like, I am a self-driven learner. So that's one of the terms that's really big. And a lot of parents can be uncomfortable with that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They're very uncomfortable with that. They're like, well, no. I want to make sure that, like, what about the teacher? What about the teacher? And again, what I think is really awesome, like I said, when I took my girls out of traditional school, it wasn't because the teachers were bad or the school was bad or any of that. It was this system. And what we can have at Alpha is these guides who are in the roles that teachers would be in. They're able to go spend time helping those kids get clear about how they're going to become self-driven learners. And the key there is they've got to get clear on getting to know the kid, understanding what motivates them, understanding their why and connecting, which, by the way, that's what teachers got into
yeah.
teaching to do is
Yeah.
to make a positive impact. I guarantee you they did not get into it to just grade papers and create lesson plans and fall behind. It's not the way it is. I have a friend whose daughter is in high school, and she got a grade back on her English paper in her traditional school, and she got a 95. And this girl is a very, very studious kid, and came up to the teacher and said, I got a 95, but I don't see any notes about why you took 5 points off. And this teacher looked at her and said, you know what? I ended up not really having time to read any of the papers, so I gave everybody a straight 95.
Unbelievable.
I mean, unbelievable. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is I can't imagine that there's very many teachers that are doing something like that. That's a very extreme example. However, it speaks to this idea that teachers are so overburdened with all of that extra work that they have to do. And what we're able to do at Alpha is help these guides work with the kids to get really clear. But it requires parents to be a little bit uncomfortable, say, hey, my kid is going to be a self-driven learner. What we see in our 2-hour learning is it takes about 100 days for students to kind of plug into the system and understand, like, okay, here's how it's going and here's how it works. So, every year at Alpha, we'll have new parents who are kind of like on the edge of their seats, like, I like the philosophy, but are we sure we're doing that? And
it's tough. It's hard.
It is tough. Yeah. And you know what, as a parent, it's always tough to watch your kids struggle, right? It's always tough. But what we find too is in that struggle is where so much growth happens. And that's true in life, right? You have a sports background. You've seen how true that is. And actually, that's another thing, with your athletic background, one of the things I love about Alpha is how we think about kind of a sports athletic mindset. Yeah. Maybe you can talk a little about that.
Sure. The guides in my role at Alpha has been such a joy, and seeing the process of a student encounter a challenge and then figure out what needs to happen to overcome that obstacle. That skill in and of itself is one of the most invaluable things you can ever walk away with. I never thought that I would be in a million years leaving the NBA to get into education, but being here, it is so obvious to me that everything in life requires some sort of sacrifice. Either you sacrifice for what you want, or what you want will become your sacrifice, right? And when it comes to these students and getting a certain level of confidence and to truly become a self-driven individual, that comes when you overcome obstacles. And to overcome obstacles, you got to stretch a little bit. You got to grow. You got to do something you haven't done before. And I'm not interested in just smiling and waving. I want to coach you to become your best self. Right? I want to coach you into stepping into a space where you're winning championships. You're not just trying to get an A on a test. You're trying to get excited, right? And same thing with tests. When you talk about mastery, never in my life have I been afraid to take a test that I knew I was prepared for. Mm-hmm. Like if I truly knew I was prepared for it, I was excited to prove it to the world. Like I wanted to give me, let me show you that I can get 100. Let me show you I can get a perfect score. So in conclusion, I can't thank you enough for your insight, your thoughts, your role in changing the future of education. Thank you so much for doing this with us, and excited to.
People like you are what parents want their kids to be around. They want them to be around adults who are excited and can help them see a vision for, like, why does this learning matter and what am I going to go and do with it, which is awesome. So we're building something super cool at Alpha, and it's going to be really exciting as it kind of spreads across the country. I think education is ripe for a revolution, and with AI and technology that's making this possible, we can absolutely make it just totally crush.
It's awesome. So if you would like to learn more about Alpha School, go to ChatGPT, type in Alpha School Austin. You'll learn something.
That's a good idea. That's great. Thanks, Jamal.
Thank you.
Ready for today's takeaways? Here are 3 things from my conversation with Jamal that can help you think about what you should expect from your child's education. Number 1, ask yourself what you want for your child's education. Do you believe the traditional system is meeting the needs of your child? Are you happy with the status quo? If not, what's missing? Number 2, evaluate your child's specific needs. Do they love school? Are they excelling? Are they learning life skills that will equip them for success? If the answers aren't a resounding yes, then don't be complacent. And number 3, consider alternatives. While the school down the street is an easy option, there are many more. From supplementing your current school to alternative schools to homeschooling, there are options available to parents. And for all of your friends who can relate, tell them about Future of Education. Check us out on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube and leave us a review. Let's go crush this week. If you're finding this conversation about parenting helpful, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks.